What? There we go.
All right. Is there anything else I need to do on my end?
No, you're all good.
Welcome to
We're on the photography chat now.
with Merlin. Photography chat with Merlin.
So welcome to another episode of the Photography Chat. We've got Stephen Reeves with us. It's season 3, episode 10. And
Hey, I like the number 10.
yeah, it's
My
a
birthday
nice
is October 10th.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's the 10th month, isn't it?
Yep. 10-10.
That's nice.
I was not born in 1910 though, so.
Well, and it's good that you weren't born in 1010 either, because
Right, yeah.
that could be interesting.
Or 2010. This would be quite the beard for someone who's only 12.
Yeah, that would be something else. Thanks for joining me. It's great to see you virtually. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. I was trying to remember if we'd seen each other at a PolaCon since the Oklahoma show.
No.
And
Oklahoma was the last time.
yeah, I think so. And it seems like Oklahoma was yesterday. Like it just happened.
It does. That's like, time is so weird right now, because it doesn't feel like that much time has happened. But then I sat and thought about it, and I was like, there's people that I haven't seen since 2019. And I'm like,
right?
2019. That was a long time ago now.
It is, and the older you get, the worse it gets too. I mean, pandemic or not, it speeds up. I heard someone the other day say that the reason is because we don't think of time in a linear fashion. Mm-hmm. We think of time relative to how long we've been alive. So the older we get, 1 year is not, maybe it's 1/20th of your life when you're 20. But when you're 50, I turned 50 this year, it's, 1 year is the very small piece of all the years. And, so it's, I don't know. We're diving into a very existential.
Well, I mean, that happens on the chat sometimes, and that's the part that I enjoy about it, because the format is pretty loose and fast. I never plan an agenda, really. The only premise is that I talk to someone who uses photography some way in their practice. Sometimes we talk about gear, sometimes we talk about life. It kind of goes all over the place, but I kind of get a kick out of that more than the chats where it's like, so tell me what your favorite focal length is, and what's your favorite film stock, and
right?
do you own a Leica?
No, I've got my wife and I, Erin and I, we've got a impressive. I don't know. I don't like to brag. We have a lot of cameras. We have a vintage camera collection that's in the hundreds, and we've got a lot of different things. And we've sort of like the Jack White Rag and Bone song. We went through a phase where we were just scooping up as much stuff as we could get our hands on, and because we were also connected with teaching and doing some other sort of community-based things, people would want to find reasons to give us stuff, and so, or give us a good deal on stuff. And so we've got some really nice Hasselblad equipment, for example, but we don't have any Rollies and no Leicas. So I do have a little Bessa, the sort of imitation Leica, for the sole purpose of that 15 millimeter, 13 millimeter, the super wide lens, which is one of my favorite cameras. I love that little camera, but that's the closest thing I've got to a Leica. Ah, yes. And in fact, here's my wonderful wife. Cheers.
Cheers. I'm just having bubbly because I got to drive later. I'm at the studio right now.
Right. It's still in the middle of the afternoon there. It's, it's happy hour in Texas.
Well, isn't it always happy hour in Texas?
We are the friendly state, they say.
I do, and some Leica bros might get mad at me at this, but I like the Bessas more than Leicas personally.
I've often wondered if I would actually throw down the money to buy, not a used one or a collectible one, but a new off the shelf rangefinder, that the Bessa is probably an economic value.
Hmm.
And then you can get the Canadian glass, instead of hawking everything I own to get the real Leica stuff. I know several people who shoot Leica and they swear by it. In fact, in my darkroom class, I've got a student who's actually Ukrainian, which, man, what a week. But she's a Leica shooter, and so just last week I said, so tell me, because I've always been an SLR person or medium format or whatever else. What's the appeal? Like, why shoot Leica? Is it just because you're using like the Rolex of cameras and and that kind of thing? And I sort of get that. I know people who shoot Hasselblad because it's Hasselblad. And she goes, well, it's a good camera. They do require maintenance and stuff like that, but it's the lightweight. It's the compact nature of it, and being able to walk around with a really high end piece of glass, a fast lens. And I get it. It's a small little package.
I wouldn't say lightweight though.
No, that's. Compared to carrying around like a Nikon F6.
And I remember. Oh, sorry about that.
No, it's all weight is relative.
It is, and I remember your F6, and you told me the story about that in Tulsa, and it kind of blew my mind a little bit.
I grabbed some show and tell cameras, and I didn't grab that one because I felt like that just really was bragging. But that was just too much.
If anyone deserved to get an F6, it's
for anyone listening who's wondering what he's talking about. Someone gave me an F6, an F5, an F100. Literally like 8 bodies. Going all. He was one of these guys who did. Like sports photography, not like professional sports, like school sports. Like if you're in high school and it's like the team photo day, and it's like the team photo, the group photo, but then it's also the individual, and and there's how many schools in a school district or the region. And I think that was his career, the volume shooting, and so he just always shot with Nikon equipment, and then every few years upgraded, and so all the way up through the F6. Which is weird because by the time that was out, it seems like that industry was full on digital, but I'm not complaining. He did not give me any of his glass because he did have digital cameras and he was downsizing and moving to, he'd bought a retirement home in Hill Country here in Texas and was having to, get rid of some extra stuff. And so, he wanted his film cameras to go to someone who taught. And so I'm like, well, I do teach. Yeah, it's a hell of a camera, and it's one I would probably never own otherwise.
I understand that sentiment because I have the F5 and I absolutely love my F5, and looking at the F6, it's a beautiful looking camera. I just can't justify the cost of it.
Right, I wouldn't have either. Part of what got me into vintage, part of what got me into film in the first place. Because I sort of went backwards with it all. I started out digital, and got my first little Nikon DSLR, a D80, and was looking at the price of lenses and this, that, and the other, and it was expensive. And this was about 10 years ago when digital was really starting to eat into commercial photography. So people were dumping Mamiya equipment and Bronica and film stuff like dumpster prices. And so I thought, well, wait, I can get all this really high-end film gear for pennies. I bought my first, actually my only RB67 for $300, and it came with a body, 2 lenses, 3 or 4 backs, a whole bunch of other extras like a prism viewfinder, all this stuff in a Pelican case, in a nice big Pelican case. The Pelican case was worth $300.
Holy shit.
I don't know if you've ever tried to go out and buy a Pelican case, but they're hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, they're not cheap.
I basically paid for the Pelican case and got all this stuff thrown in for free. My first 8x10 processor was given to me. It was the guy was about to throw it out, and he's like, I don't know if this is, because this was before Impossible Project had brought it back. And so he said, I don't know if there's any use to this at all. Here you go. And so when Impossible did bring it back, I was like, oh crap, I've got the processor. So that was cool.
I paid like $2,000 for my processor.
Right? So I had a processor. I got a box of the Impossible Project film. I did one shot. I'm doing the second shot, and I hear this loud pop, and smoke starts pouring out of the processor. The cap blew. And I am not an electrician. I can't tinker with that stuff. I don't know how to solder, any of that stuff. And so I'm like, crap, what do I do? I got on Craigslist, which at the time I was on quite a bit because I was using it to track down film equipment. And I forget what I went looking for, but I either found Annie, who had a processor, or I'd made a post about looking for a processor. But that's how I met Justin Good.
Oh, okay.
He answered the ad or found me somehow, or maybe I'd met Annie, who was a student around here at the time who had gotten some Impossible Project film as well, and she had a processor. And maybe I was talking to her. There's some connection there between Craigslist, me, Annie, and Justin. That's how Justin and I met. And that's how I learned that. And I'd already met Daniel Rodriguez a little bit. But that was sort of my whole introduction into the Instant Film Society and hanging out with me and Justin. Spent a tremendous amount of time over those years hanging out and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But yeah, it's most of the connections and friendships and adventures I've been on have been somewhat tied to gear. Sort of hacking our way through finding cheap gear or, toss-off gear or just, it all comes back to that rag and bone, that sort of, looking for the garage sale find kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like that's more of a rarity now than back then.
You can't do it anymore. Those days are over.
No, like I bought my F5 in 2018 in Toronto for like $250 Canadian, which is like $50 American.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, and now they're going for like 600 plus. Like it's crazy.
Crap cameras people are paying too much money for crap cameras. And the sad thing is yeah, the prices have gone up, but the availability and what's out there is still diminishing because time is passing. Like the cameras that were available 10 years ago that you could find online, they've all aged 10 years and they've all swapped hands a few times now. And so what you used to be able to plop down $50 for, I used to buy cameras just to get the lens off the front. You'd see some beater that had maybe a 51.4 on it, and you'd be like, oh, it's worth they call that the back cap. Comes with a free back cap, the camera body. But now that same camera in semi-working condition will go for like $200, $250, and it's not a working camera. And so I have a feeling that there's a lot of people out there spending a lot of money blindly and ending up with really disappointing results. And I feel bad that that's sort of happening.
Agreed. Like it blows my mind the people that spend all that money on like Yashica T4s and the Olympus that like tiny with the mood.
The XA?
Not the XA, the stylus. Like people.
Oh, is that the little point and shoot? That's another thing that I don't have. The what's the C brand? The one that all the celebrities have, the tiny little point and shoot.
Oh, the contacts.
The contact, yeah, and it's got the really nice glass on it, like a 2-weight piece of German glass on it or something like that.
Yeah, it's nice glass, but they're just ticking time bombs. Like,
yeah,
I had a Nikon 30.
Kind of like the
what's that?
Those SX70s. Those I love that camera, but they were not well made, and they're not repairable.
No, they are.
If you can drill rivets and solder wire,
Well, you happen to be very lucky where you're located because you just happen to have an SX70 Wizard in your neighborhood.
That's true. And you know what? I think I've brushed up against him on Facebook. I've because what I've got, or maybe a dozen or so semi-functional bodies that I'm like, hey, let me trade you some non-working bodies for like one good working one.
He'd totally do that.
Yeah, the conversation was going very well, and then I got busy. It seems like my normal day, I start getting anxious if I don't have seven pokers in the fire or spinning plates. I always joke that I'm spinning 5 tops on 10 plates each, so I think some things kind of fall through the cracks sometimes, and that is definitely one that has. But trying to circle back around to some of that stuff.
Yeah, like I mean, Zane's great. He's got 4 or 5 of my cameras right now, and he does really cool custom shit too. So it's like anything you can.
So what's your go-to camera for Polaroid?
Well, right now, because all of my favorite cameras are with Zane right now, I've actually been using the One Step Plus a lot.
Yeah, we've got one of the early, the white one. I forget if it's just the One Step. It was the first version that came back out.
The One Step, yeah.
Yeah, they've gotten a little fancier now, I think.
They haven't, like, a lot of people shat on the One Step Plus because it's like it's got a plastic lens and whatever, and it's got the fucking make sure to remember to flick the switch to the right focus level or you're gonna screw your pictures up. But I really like this camera a lot for what it is. It's a great camera, and this camera got me through the first wave of the pandemic. Because we had it really bad in Toronto compared to like other parts of Canada, even though other parts of Canada complained as if it was really bad for them. We were second worst to Quebec. Quebec had it probably the worst here, where it's like they had, like, if you were caught outside of curfew times, you'd be arrested.
Oh, wow.
In Ontario, we just had a stay-at-home order that lasted several months, and
see, here in Texas, it's the exact opposite. You'd get more grief if you were trying to wear a mask. Don't even get me started on.
Don't tread on me.
Oh my God. Texas is a strange land. It seems like we're in a race to the bottom with Arizona and Florida right now.
I don't know if it could get any worse than Florida, though.
I don't know. Some of the we don't have the "Don't Say Gay" bill, but we do have we're going to report your poor trans kid for child abuse stuff going. So it's pretty neck and neck right now.
Well, I think we're giving you guys a run for your money too with our latest bout of freedom fuckers.
Is that the truck driver stuff?
Yeah, the people that tried to overthrow the government and then they didn't really do a good job of it, but it was in the name of freedom. Even though their whole thing was just a flagrant display of freedom. Like, they had ultimate freedom to traverse the country, harassing people the whole way. Ultimate freedom to occupy a town for nearly a month, terrorizing the residents of it. I didn't really see what freedoms they were missing out on.
Yeah, this will turn into the most depressing podcast ever. If we're trying to,
I was having a brunch with my friend Brian, who is this fantastically gay man who I absolutely adore, and I was like, Brian, this is what happens when white people get a pride parade.
We call it pride. It's proud.
Yeah, it's
proud.
Very proud.
I do. Being a Texan, I've been a lifelong Texan. I was born in Fort Worth. Lived in Denton for a while. I was going to school. Lived in Dallas for a long time now. I am thankful that as red as Texas gets, we do have highly concentrated blue pockets in the cities, and that's true for Dallas, for Austin, for Houston, even like San Antonio and El Paso, all of our big cities. Even Fort Worth is a little more progressive than you might expect, and so you can be however you want to be in Texas, and there's a place for you, especially if you're in one of the cities. So that's one of the saving graces of being in Texas, is that there are enough people here. There's enough transplants from other places, and there's a lot of different cultures in Texas that do blend together. And so I think we do get, there's a lot of nonsense too, and a lot of pride. I think that people, and sort of libertarianism, where people are like king of the mountain kind of thing, where, I can fend for myself, so you should be able to too. And I mean, there's a lot of that, but there's also a lot of diversity in Texas. And so it could be a lot worse.
Yeah, Jessica says blueberry dots.
Right.
And I have to admit that the first time I went to Texas, I was a little terrified about it, because I'm not white, and you hear stories of what America could be like. So I was definitely nervous flying down there, and it was also the same time when the fucking whiny beer guy became a Supreme Court justice. What was his name again?
Oh,
Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh. Yeah.
So,
I like beer.
Yeah, everyone does, dipshit.
Right.
Yeah, so I was definitely nervous, and then I was really surprised when I saw what Denton was like, what Dallas was like, and I kind of fell in love with Denton a lot, which I wasn't expecting that to happen.
Denton is a really special place. I went to the University of North Texas. I was there for a number of years. Growing up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there were, and being in high school and whatnot, there were definitely two parts of the local region that were very well known for local music. You want to go see bands play. It was Denton, around the campus, of course, and Deep Ellum, and fell in love with both. And so growing up, living in Denton, going to school there, getting a job in Dallas, managed to move to Deep Ellum. So between Denton and Deep Ellum, I think both places are extremely special, and both places continue to be extremely special. A lot of great music.
And on the music thing, that's an interesting point, because I like the Mountain Goats a lot, and one of my favorite songs of theirs is "The Best Ever Death Metal Band in Denton," and I was in my rental car, and random songs were playing on my phone, and that song came up, and I was just like, this feels kind of hilarious to listen to this song about Denton in Denton.
We were just the other night, Sunday night, we were up the street at actually at CBC, one of the places that the PolaCon, we've sort of gathered up on to go to the fair. It's this little bar here in Deep Ellum. It's got a big patio. We were sitting at the bar, and there was a couple there who we, overhearing their conversation, found out that they were from Tucson, Arizona, and they'd driven all the way to Texas to see Snarky Puppy. That was the guy's favorite band, and Snarky Puppy was playing a show, maybe in Dallas, maybe in Denton. They're from Denton. But they were also going to see Midlake played
cool.
this week too. Yeah. So they got to see Snarky Puppy and Midlake. These folks came all the way from Tucson, halfway across the United States, just to see, some local bands play. I guess I wouldn't call Midlake and Snarky Puppy local bands. I think they've got maybe a bigger following than that. But to, I guess, hear them play in their local area.
Have
you ever done that? Have you driven a long way? I know you road trip down to Oklahoma for Jason's show, but have you ever gone to see a band play? What's the farthest you've ever driven to see a band play?
Oh man. I flew to Toronto from Vancouver to see my friend Decisive do his first rap show in a long time. He kind of took a pause from rap music for a while because he got really disheartened. Like he's been Juno nominated 4 times, and he gets a little bitter about it. He's like, always a bridesmaid, never.
Always a bridesmaid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And he's just like, one year he was nominated in the same category as Drake, and he was just like, why just fucking give him the award? Who's gonna beat Drake? Like,
Right.
why even like make me come here and be like, you might have a chance against Drake? It's like, I don't. Drake's gonna win.
Oh man.
But yeah, I flew from Vancouver to Toronto to see him do his first show in a long time at the Silver Dollar Room in Spadina. And this was before I moved to Toronto, like I think a year or so before I moved to Toronto. And the Silver Dollar Room no longer exists. It's been torn down. It was a very sketchy dive bar.
Oh man.
Up on Spadina near, I think Dundas and Spadina. And I just about got mugged that day too. Like, so he went and did sound check, and then we went to go get Church's Chicken. We went to Popeyes, and it was just like across the street. And when we were walking out of the Popeyes, this guy like came up and got like right in my face, and he's like, "Yo, you got any money for me, man?" And I thought it was like this dude that knew like Derek and his friend, and just like fucking with me. And I was like, "No." And he's like, "You got any money for me, man?" Like he was like real. And I'm like, "Oh shit!"
Oh, shaking you down. Oh man.
This guy, and then like Derek and his friend were like getting behind, like they were gonna jump him if he was gonna attack me. And I was like, "No, man, like fuck off. I don't have any money for you." And like he got like right, like almost touching my nose, like we were gonna like make out or something. And
Oh man.
I was like, "I don't have any money, man." And then he just like fucked off, and it's like, wow. And Derek was like, "Dude, I thought you were gonna get like stabbed or something."
Right. So that's Henry Rollins, and what's his friend's name? They were mugged. They were walking down the street in L.A. Joe Cole, and someone pulled a gun on him and then ended up shooting Joe Cole, and so he died.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Are you a Sonic Youth fan at all?
I do like Sonic Youth, yeah.
Like the song 100%, Jason's in the video for 100%. That song's about Joe Cole. If you open up the line, if you get the CD out, the liner notes have got a picture of Joe Cole. He was Rollins' best friend, and like crazy shit like that can happen. Being in Deep Ellum, we've got, so all the bars are here and all the tattoo parlors and all that stuff, all the nightclubs.
Yeah.
But we're also like 3 blocks off of where most of the city of Dallas shelters are.
Oh, okay.
And also like some of the, if you get, picked up for public intox and stuff like that, when you get out on, Sunday morning, you end up strolling through Deep Ellum. So we've got homeless guys around, and they're always, trying to bum money and stuff like that. But then we also get people who are just out of their mind on whatever, crack or speed or tripping balls, just wandering the neighborhood, and that's what worries me. I mean, living down here, you kind of get used to being approached for money, and you just kind of figure out how to sort of navigate that. That's that happens on the daily. But what worries me is someone, just being high out of their mind and freaking out and turning an otherwise, nothing situation into something violent. Knock on wood, it hasn't happened. But yeah, I mean, it's like crazy stuff happens everywhere.
Well, and typically, like, because like Vancouver has a really bad drug issue in the Lower East Side, and like it's been like that for a long time, and it's only just gotten worse. But
help me out with my Canadian history here. Is it Tom Ford?
Rob Ford.
Who was the Rob Ford? Thank you. Is that Vancouver?
No, he was Toronto.
Toronto. Okay.
Yeah, and his asshole jerky older brother is currently the premier of Ontario.
Right, I saw that. Like, yeah, they're both. It's weird. They're what, car dealership guys or something?
No, I think their family like had a paper company or something like that.
Something,
Like,
yeah. It was like a big family business, and
yeah.
then they somehow got into politics.
Well, I mean, that's usually like if you have lots of money, it sort of leads
Yeah.
down that direction. And yeah, Doug Ford was also famous before that because he was one of the best, like, I think, crack dealers in Toronto before he became a politician. So,
Right, but I remember which one. So which one died?
Rob Ford, the one that was mayor.
Rob, and and he was like high on crack as mayor.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I can't complain. We've got Ted Cruz. I mean, we've got. I am not trying to shame any Canadian city at all. We've got. We definitely have our embarrassments here. But yeah, I remember seeing that in the news. Like, you don't hear in the United States, you don't hear a lot about Canada. But when what you do hear is, crack addicted mayor, is on TV again.
The only times I've ever heard of Canada being on like any American TV, it's always been embarrassing. Like there's the Rob Ford stuff, and then on Letterman. Remember how Letterman used to do the bumper sticker segment, where he'd talk about bumper stickers from different places, and
Okay.
he talked about Surrey, which is like on the outskirts of Vancouver. It's part of the greater Vancouver Regional District, but he was just like, and from Canada, we've got a bumper sticker from Surrey, British Columbia that reads, "My other ride is a Surrey girl." And I was just like, why is this what the world stage gets to hear about Canada? Like,
oh man,
it's just kind of embarrassing.
I have to confess, the furthest I've made it into Canada was one afternoon. Erin and I were at Glacier National Park in Montana, and apparently there's a Canadian side to the park.
Oh, wild!
And so we had our passports with us because we knew, and this is June, so the roads are not completely snowed over. So
you don't have to trade your car in for a husky
for like
sled.
a snowmobile, or snowshoes or whatever, huskies. So you drive up this little mountain road, and you go through the probably smallest U.S. Canadian checkpoint. A little bar that goes up and down, and one person working in a booth, and 4 cars are in line. And you drive through it, and then you drive for about 30 minutes, and then you're in the northern part of the park, and you see some Canadian flags. Otherwise, you wouldn't know. There are 2 ways to know you're in Canada on this little part of the world. One, the flagpoles have these weird red and white maple leaf flags. And you're like, that's different. But then the speed limit signs, which say 50 kilometers per hour, which is not 50 miles per hour.
No, that's a big difference.
And people pulled over to the side of the road getting speeding tickets because they think they're doing 50 miles per hour.
I mean, there's a really easy way to figure out if you're in the U.S. or Canada, and that's both of them are fake and none of it's real, and we need to recognize that both the Canadian and the U.S. government stole the land from the indigenous people and enslaved them.
I think if you look up in the dictionary under white privilege, it should just say North American.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I know there are class issues all over the world. Asia, famously has, probably class issues that far outstrip what goes on in the United States or in Canada. But hands down, it's white people problems. Like anything we complain about, or North American people problems, it's versus, for example, what's going on in Ukraine right now. Like, we don't have those problems.
No.
We don't have, we might get like a tyrant wannabe, and we've certainly had that for the last, several years, but we don't have a tyrant dropping big giant bombs on our maternity wards.
No.
We don't have ISIS, like taking, brides. We've got plenty of really crappy things. And along the southern border, we have a lot of abuse and things like that as well. But it still pales in comparison versus what, other places in the world deal with on the daily. I mentioned I've got a student from Ukraine.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, we've been invaded before, though. I mean, she's really worried. She's got family over there. She doesn't know if her cousins are alive or dead. But she's like, yeah, 6 years ago we had a puppet government, and that was awful. I mean, it's really bad over there, but it's also always really bad, compared to what we have to deal with here. And so I always try to be, sort of graceful about the luxury of being a North American. We have our problems, but man,
well,
it's not like it can be.
So I don't know enough about like the dynamics of the United States, so I can't comment on the US, but Canada has a really fantastic marketing team. And
they must, because here in the States, we always feel like Canada just doesn't have any problems.
Canada is plagued with problems. And the Freedom Convoy really brought that to light, just how absolutely racist and just rife with white privilege Canada really is. Because that Freedom Convoy, had it been Indigenous people or people of color, they wouldn't have even made it out of Vancouver, let alone get all the way to Ottawa and occupy it, honking horns and shitting on the streets for almost a month. Cops were like giving high fives and hugs to people in the Freedom Convoy when they should have been arresting them and shit like that. But even that aside, we're over 40 years in Canada where most reservations in Canada don't have clean drinking water. And they haven't for like over 4 decades now. They're living in squalor. And even though we're not running residential schools anymore, we're still stealing Indigenous children from their families. Now it's just through like child protection services and, sending them to like foster care and stuff. So, Canada really hasn't improved in that regard. We've just hidden our squalor really well and just kind of like tucked it under. Like the government says they don't have enough money to give clean drinking water to the reservations, and the reservations are absolutely 100% the government's responsibility, because we stole this land from those people and said, hey, we'll provide for you in these little parcels of land and make sure you're okay, which we haven't. And it's I think it's around like $2.8 million is what it would cost to retrofit and give clean water to reservations across Canada. We don't have that money. But then Justin Trudeau's government, which I dislike him for a lot of reasons, not the same reasons as the Freedom Convoy people, but mostly because he's fallen short on his promises that he made to help the Indigenous people of our country. And
I think we're seeing kind of the same thing too. I mean, we had Trump for all those years, and now we've got Biden, which was definitely an improvement. But I think there's a large number of progressive people here in the United States that it's great, but you said you're going to do all this other stuff too, and it's not happening, and and all that. And even back in the Obama years, there were a lot of things where, like Guantanamo Bay and stuff like that, where it's like it was great that we weren't under Bush anymore, but there was still a lot of things that kind of came up short, and it's easy to get frustrated and.
It is, but it was also kind of blatant with some stuff too. So like in one breath, he's saying, I don't have the money to give them clean drinking water. And then in a different breath, he ends up spending what initially was only supposed to be $4 billion, but turned out being like closer to $7 or $8 billion, buying a pipeline that the parent company of the pipeline knew was a bad deal, and they were about to pull out anyways. It was a Texas-based company. And they were going to pull
Texas.
Yeah. So they were going to pull out of the project anyways, because they knew it was like, a shit show to get into. And the Canadian government was saying, hey, we don't have $2.8 billion to give clean drinking water to Indigenous people who have not had it for over 4 decades. Let's give $8 billion to this Texas oil company for a pipeline that's an absolute shit show, and we have no idea how to run a pipeline. That seems like a good investment. And so like that's some of the reason why I dislike Trudeau, is like for things like that. the mask stuff and all the other things that people are upset about, like, that's not his fault. That's at a provincial level, which I found kind of hilarious that they drove all of that way to protest in front of our federal government, like the federal capital, when they don't issue those mandates. It's done at a provincial, which would be like the equivalent of the state level.
Yeah.
So they should have done that to the provinces, but it's just, I don't know. I just look at the whole world, like Canada, the US, what's going on in Asia, what's going on in China, what's going on in Ukraine with all of that. And it's just like, why can't we stop being dicks to each other?
Right? Can't we all just get along?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah, for sure. And one of the things I mentioned when we were kind of setting all this up, and I sent the link and everything, my wife and I, at the beginning of the pandemic, took over a 60s rock show. I'd been on the station for several years. I used to do an overnight, one of the overnight time slots, like midnight to 4 a.m., Sunday night, Monday morning, which I think there are about 2 people listening. But right at the beginning of the pandemic, the guy that was doing this 60s rock show was having some health issues, and the pandemic was kind of making everything kind of sketchy. And so we were filling in, and then ended up taking over the show. So for the past couple of years, we've been doing a 60s rock show.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. It's 2 hours once a week. I was born in 72. Erin's born in. We did not live in the 60s. But here we are doing a 60s rock show. And I think growing up in the 80s, you're not ignorant to the 60s. Like, we knew about Jim Morrison. We knew about the Beatles. Knew about the Rolling Stones. You know about, all the big hits and stuff like that. So we had to kind of go back and sort of educate ourselves. And you know about Woodstock and the hippie movement and all the anti-war stuff and everything. And it's been interesting to view the current world through these retro sort of lenses that have been brought upon by doing deep dive into 60s culture, like we've been doing for the last couple of years. And this whole, the problems we're having now, like the lines around the block for gas, because gas is like $4 or $5 a gallon now. Not the first time we've had really nightmarish things with the price of gas. We had these, this gas crunch in the 70s.
Yeah, the oil crisis.
Right. So these things are cyclical. They do keep happening, and the question is it just a matter of, like, a generation grows up and knows something, and then they take action and they do something about it, and then the kids of those people grow up and they don't really know that hardship, and so they get lax. So that's why this stuff keeps happening? Because it's like it has to go far enough before it happens again. I don't know.
I think that's part of it, but another thing that's exacerbating all of this is that capitalism it died. Like it died in 2008, and we've been living in this like post-capitalist thing, which is it's almost like a what was it? It's a type of feudalism, but it's like everything's being run by the elites right now, because like the vast majority of like the power and money is held by a very small.
You definitely have
amount of
a
people.
handful of extremely rich people who are trying to launch themselves into space because they've got that much extra cash laying around.
I mean, on that one too, I
mean,
want to
right?
I want to high five or shake hands with the team that built Bezos's dick rocket. So
did you see the headline like yesterday or today that he threw like this yelling, screaming fit because his spacesuit didn't feel right in the crotch, and he flew in his personal tailor to have it altered?
What?
I'm not making this up. I read this on the internet, so you know it's true. I
mean, everything on the internet is true. So
everything on the internet is true.
And on that point, Damien made an interesting note here that the freedom stuff that happened in Canada wasn't actually about the pandemic or mandates or any of that. It was actually an attempted insurrection on Canadian democracy. they had this memorandum of understanding that they wrote. And in the memorandum of understanding that Canada Unity, the people behind the Freedom Convoy, wrote, they outlined demands that they wanted the dissolution of elected officials in federal government to be replaced with the Senate and a group of concerned Canadians of their choosing to create a new Concerned Canadians coalition, which would then lead the country instead of elected officials.
That sounds familiar.
It does sound familiar, and it's interesting because a lot of the people that like banded on this thing, they just focused on, well, they're fighting for mandates, and I hate wearing a face diaper, and I'm not going to get the jab because I don't want to have 3G or poop COVID out of my butt or whatever. They jumped on that, but none of them really took the time to read the memorandum of understanding, even though they signed the petition for it, saying like, "Hey, this is good. I like it." So it's, I don't know, all this stuff is really dumb. And what I'm missing the most right now is being able to travel freely.
Oh man, so let's talk about that, because we can use that to actually bring this back around to photography.
Yes.
I got into photography in the early 2000s for real, and had always loved the idea of seeing places. And one of the first things I did, I was still a corporate guy. I was a database systems analyst guy for years and years. And I had some vacation time coming up, and said, you know, there's no reason to drive to the middle of Kansas. Like, there's no Disney World there. And so I thought, well, crap, I'm going to go to the middle of Kansas just to see what the hell it looks like. And so I went on what was the first of several, I call them wanderlust trips. And it was just me in a car without an itinerary. I was just driving down random highways just to kind of see what different places looked like.
And I gotta say, the Midwest is actually really beautiful.
It is. And so I drove around through Kansas and Nebraska, South Dakota, Iowa, I made it to Chicago on that trip, drove through parts of Missouri, places I would never in my life see if I didn't go out of my way to see them sort of deliberately. And, you know, you always hear that crack is so addictive that you do it once and you're addicted to it. Like, that's how crack works. That was my crack. Like, just being able to get in the car and drive, and to be just like in the middle of absolute kind of nowhere, not nowhere to me, someone else's, neighborhood. These tiny little towns in the Midwest or in the West or wherever it is, it's just people living their lives. But there's a beauty to everywhere if you know how to kind of look for it. And so as soon as I possibly, and I took cameras with me, as soon as I could, I did another one and another one and another one. And I've racked up, I don't know how many, 50, 100,000 miles, 36 states. I've done dozens of these trips now. And, somewhere along the way, Erin joined me and we started doing them together. And we were doing 2 or 3 trips a year. Each trip would be somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 miles apiece. I mean, we were just seeing so much and experiencing so much. And it was really a huge part of what, we both love photography. We both love everything about it. We geek out about it. But these road trips were really what made it worthwhile to do. It's like, it's kind of like you can learn how to build something, but until you can figure out what to do with that thing you've built, then it's like, okay, well, it's just a device. These trips became why we pushed ourselves to learn so much about the different aspects of photography, because we knew it when we were doing these trips that we wanted to be able to capture, the beauty that we were seeing in other places and to be able to bring it back and share with people. We haven't been on one of those trips in several years now because of the pandemic. We've done a couple of things here and there. We got to go down to Galveston a few times for Jason with his book, and we got to go down to other parts of Texas. And, we've done but we haven't done like the real full on in the car with the cameras no destination. You just drive until you see something cool. You pull over, you jump out, you take a picture of it, you find some food, you find a place to sleep, you wake up and you do it again the next day. We haven't done that in several years, and we so desperately miss it. It's sort of like live music. We went to the first concert that we'd seen since before the pandemic last week. We saw Nick Cave here in Dallas, and which was an amazing show.
I saw your post on Facebook about that.
Yeah. I've always loved going to see live music play. It's always been one of those things that's super important to me. And being away from that for a couple of years, you kind of forget how you can, in your home, you can turn your stereo up loud and you can play loud music. You can even put on like a live album. It's not the same when you're there live and the music just envelops you, and the energy from the stage and the lights and the crowd and the noise. And I have a feeling that once we do get back out on the road and drive around and shoot stuff again, it'll be that same spark of joy that you almost forget that you can even experience. Mm-hmm. When there's something that you just love doing so much and it's ripped away from you and you can't do it for, 2 years, 2.5 years, you almost forget that it ever brought you that kind of joy in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I'm having the first feeling of FOMO that I've had since the pandemic started, because right now, while we're here talking, a bunch of our Polaroid peers are all in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And I went back and forth on it so much because flights were fairly reasonable.
Yeah.
I found reasonable testing too, but then I got stuck on, if I test positive on the way back, can I afford 2 weeks in San Francisco? The answer is absolutely not.
No, I don't think anybody can.
No. And so I was just like...
Jeff Bezos can.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos can, for sure. But I was like, 4 days is already going to cost me enough money to get down there. So I'm like, if I end up there for 2 weeks, like, I can't do that. Like, I could pay for it, but like, that's something that it's going to take me a long time to recover from. So for the first time since 2019, I'm feeling FOMO. And it's really weird because you mentioned that, looking for gear got you into this community kind of thing.
Right. But it's such a strong community too, though.
It is. And that's the thing. So traveling got me into this community. In an odd way, Jason got me into this community. And also kind of helped me find a new lease on life kind of thing. Because I was having a hard time when I moved to Toronto, and like I've told some friends this story, but I didn't even share it with Jason when we did our chat last year. I was having a hard time in Toronto, and like I deal a lot with like mental illness, like suicidal ideation, depression, all that kind of stuff. And Toronto was a big adjustment for me, and I was in a really bad place where I was like, you know what? I think I'm done. This is it. And I was having like a night where I was debating that, and it was like 3 a.m. in Toronto, and I look at Instagram, and it was like within 45, I think it said 45 seconds on the bottom, but Jason had posted about the thing he was going to do at the Leica store for the book signing for Plainview, and the photo workshop. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should do that. And like, I saw that it was like a very small amount, like it was 50 seats for the book signing and 12 seats for the workshop.
Yeah.
And I debated a little bit because I was like, well, that like it was going to be like $500 or something. And I was like, that should go to debt repayment. And then I'm like, well, you're planning on killing yourself anyway. So what's $500 more on the old credit card? Like, just,
oh man.
And so I was like, fuck it. I bought the ticket because I was like, I can't sleep on it because like I could wake up and it could be sold out by the time I look at it again.
Yeah.
And then I was immediately terrified because I'm like, well, what if he's a dick? Because he's been really like a big inspiration for me for my like photography and like practice and everything. And so it was like I got that fear of like, never meet your heroes kind of thing.
Oh, right. Yeah, sure.
And couldn't have been a nicer guy. It was really cool to like, meet him in Boston. And that trip just really changed things a lot for me. Because I met Armand on that trip because he was up there with him.
Oh, yeah.
And Armand and I hit it off really well. Like,
he's a great guy. He's such a great guy.
He's such a good dude. Like, he's a very close friend now, and I'm very grateful for that because it would have never happened had I like not seen Jason's post and took a chance on that trip. And then Armand was like, you know what, man, like you should come to this PolaCon thing in Texas. And I'm like, I don't know about Texas, man. And so then I went, and it was like the best thing ever. And it was just such a cool community to be part of. And the people in it are so amazing that I was just like, you know what, I gotta stick around for this because like it's fun hanging out with all these people. And it was beautiful being part of that community. And like seeing the trip to Tulsa was really cool, and seeing Jason's exhibition there was also really cool. I'm still, waiting with bated breath for the book on that one.
Man. So I met Jason a few years ago, not super long. I've a Plain View was kind of when I came around. So at one of the early PolaCons, he was there, and his first book with Chris Brown, the Polaroid stuff, had come out, and they did a Q&A, and I was there for that. And during PolaCon itself, and I don't think you were at this PolaCon.
No.
Because this was before a Plain View. And I did a little talk on scanning and stuff, how to scan your Polaroids and how to deal with that, this, that, and the other. And I'd taken I've got a Polaroid Big Shot and in some of the flash cubes. And so I'm there, and Jason shows up. And I'm like, oh my God, I'd never met Jason before. But a huge Mallrats fan.
Of course. Dude, so
huge Kevin Smith fan.
Before you jump into that one, I have to say, I made an ass of myself in Boston when I went to get my book signed, because I was like, I may never see this man ever again in my life. Yeah. And so when it was my turn to go and get my book signed, I went up and I was like, I'm so sorry, but I have to do this. And he's like, kind of looked at me quizzically, and I put my hand out like this, and I was like, can I interest you in a chocolate pretzel?
I've seen it all. I've seen people come up to him and do Mallrats stuff or quote, movies. I've seen, I think you were there in Tulsa. Maybe you were even standing there when that guy was like, hey, Earl. I'm like, one of the things that I've learned by being around Jason is how to be around famous people. Because, growing up, you go and you meet, you fanboy, you're like, oh, you just want an autograph or whatever. Spending time with Jason and seeing how he responds to the way people act to him, it's the more you can do to just be a normal human being, like, that's what they respond to.
Yeah.
They, every time I've ever seen anyone who's just doing this super fanboy thing, like they might get like a minimal or nothing at all or anything, it's always awkward. Or you get people who don't want to come up, so they'll try to do their phone off to the side to get like them. And you're like, just be a normal human being, then treat a normal human being like a human being, and you'd be amazed. But I've seen people, quote from the movies, skateboard, it's always interesting to see in Galveston, we were there for 4 or 5 hours signing books. And the line was a mile long, and you always wonder the next person up, are they a skateboard person? Are they a movie person? Are they a photographer person? Sometimes they're 2 out of 3. Sometimes they're all 3, but it's always weird to see which different angle people come from. But so he was, he was there at this thing, and I was a huge Kevin Smith fan. And so I'm like, I get to, so I got to take a big shot of Jason and scan it in and stuff like that. And then Daniel Rodrigue and Armand took an 8x10 of them. And I've got my scanner there because I'm doing the demo on scanning. And I said, oh, hey, let me scan that in. And so I scanned it in, part of my demo. And, PolaCon is a few days. And so I came all the way back to Dallas at night. And so one of the things that I do, I'm a digital printer. So I've got my dog is here. I have a greyhound. That's Asia.
Up, puppers?
She just turned 13. She just had a birthday. And she's upset that I'm on her futon. So she's not a fan right now. But so I came all the way back to Dallas. One of the things I've got is a 44-inch wide printer. And so I took that 8x10 Polaroid and printed it 40x60.
Damn.
And took it back up to one of my earliest posts on Instagram is Daniel and someone else standing on either side of this 40x60 printout of the 8x10 of Jason that Armand took. That was, I guess, it's September when that happens. Jason got an Epson printer, I don't know, for Christmas or something like that, and was having some issues with it, and had asked Armand, hey, do you know anyone who knows anything about these Epson printers? And I didn't know Armand super well at the time, but Armand and Daniel, Armand was like, oh, you need to talk to Steve. And so I got a text out of the blue on, I don't know, January 2nd. It felt like it was New Year's Day. And it was, hi, this is Jason Lee. I'm having some problems with my Epson. Can you help me with it? I was like, yeah, I'll be there later today. So I drove up to Denton, and we kind of met that day and kind of worked on, just sort of geeky tech computer stuff, trying to get color right and stuff like that. And but we got to talking about other things, and it kind of turns out that, and I kind of knew that some of the photography that he was into was a lot with the same types of photography that I was into, and so we started sort of bonding over like new topographics, and he was just starting to do the road trips for Plain View, and we ended up tagging along on one of those, and we ended up doing some printing and framing for some of the early gallery shows that went along with it, and worked with him on the book, and have been working with him ever since. So through a Plain View, through the Oklahoma exhibition, all that stuff, the Galveston stuff. Didn't do a whole lot on the Stanley Barker book. I think I did some minimal stuff, but then also Raymond's book, the Polaroid book that Raymond put out, and Greg Hunt's book, heavily involved in both of those. There were two projects that Jason and I put a tremendous amount of time and effort into. Cruise Ship, which was supposed to come out right when the pandemic hit.
Yeah. And
like the very first stories that were hitting the news were cruise ship related, and we were having some printing issues, and then we kind of ran up into the part where he was supposed to start working on the Stanley Barker book. So cruise ship kind of got shelved. We spent a lot of time working on the Oklahoma book, which if that ever does come out, will be such an amazing, beautiful book. You saw the exhibition. So at the show in Tulsa, we had all these photos. You weren't meant to look at any one photo in isolation. They were all very deliberately paired together and arranged on the wall. So you might walk up and you're looking at 10 different photos, different sizes, arranged on the wall. And they were meant to be that way. You were supposed to take in all 10 of those sort of collectively. And there were about, I don't know, it seems like there were 20 different sort of sections that were things arranged and paired up and all of that. And we did a lot to try and mimic that experience in the book. But a book page is only, so big.
Yeah.
So and somewhere I've got, in the piles of stuff, I've got the mock-up of the book, which is all blank pages, but the book has so many fold-outs. You wouldn't believe the number of fold-outs that this book will have. And the pages are 13 inches wide, so already when the book is open, it's 26 inches wide, but then there are sections where there are fold outs on top of that. So, you might have a spread that's literally almost 4 feet wide.
Damn.
With this book. Absolutely amazing. And I don't know, I mean, eventually the Oklahoma book is going to come out. I feel that sort of deep down in my heart, like that's going to happen. I hope that when it does, that those fold outs still exist. We had to do all kinds of weird origami to make sure that we could have a fold out on this page, but then we didn't need the fold out on the next page because it's the same piece of paper and you can't have fold outs, so I had to build this binder. So I've got this binder with all these horrible laser print Scotch tape pieced together mock-up just so we would know which pages were folding which way, and so that when you turn the page, you didn't not have the page that you could fold over and all. I mean, we spent an entire summer test printing and figuring out, dialing everything in and figuring out the structure of the book, and then that's around the time that he moved back to California, and so we had to put it on the back burner. And so, yeah, those two projects, both Cruise Ship and Oklahoma, were both really special projects. I hope they eventually come out. I know the next thing is going to be a second edition of A Plain View for later this year. So I know it won't be 22, but I'm hopeful that in 23, at least one of those projects sees the light of day.
Well, you guys have a book for Eric coming out soon too, right? Or in the works?
For Eric? No, this is news to me.
Oh, I thought there was something he had in work. Maybe it was like there's something else. My bad.
So, which Eric?
I can't remember how to pronounce his name. Weasel's dad.
Oh, I don't know. No, it's sort of interesting. I do work a tremendous amount with Jason, but there are days that I learn things on Instagram.
That's
or because I manage some of the info accounts for like Film Photographic and whatnot. Someone will he'll post something, someone will see that, they'll go to filmphotographic.com, fill out the form, and all of a sudden I'm getting an email like, yeah, can I pre-order a second edition of A Plain View? And I'm like, hey Jason, are we doing a second edition of A Plain View? Yeah, it's funny how news travels sometimes. Sometimes I'm not the first to know.
Barb here says that she must admit she swooned because she was in Boston when at that trip as well. But she's like, but then he asked me if I drove from Saskatchewan like the guy from Toronto did. So I say we're even for our stock experiences, and he introduced me. And it's funny because he even did it in Tulsa, but he exaggerated the Toronto. He's like, this is Merlin from Toronto. And even in Tulsa, like he kind of expanded that one out. But yeah, it was just, it's a wild thing for me because I was like a big fan of like Mallrats and, all of that, like a guy thing kills me. That's,
I haven't seen all of the Jason Lee movies, and I think the ones that I saw all the Kevin Smith stuff. But like the rom-coms, I've never seen them.
If you haven't seen A Guy Thing, that one's definitely worth a watch. It's freaking hilarious.
I take that back. I did see Stealing Harvard, which
it's Gruyere.
But he's like, I want to be Steve. Yeah. I'm like, I'm Steve. I get to be the Steve. So yeah, I love that. I love that particular clip. I'll like bring it up on YouTube sometimes just to hear Jason go, I want to be Steve.
He's comical. One of my favorite ones that I saw was something Raymond posted. He was like scotch guarding a new couch or something, and like it was almost like an ad where it's like, hey there, it's really important to, protect your furniture with Scotch Guard for all these like reasons and stuff. And he's like, and after the advertising break, come on back and I'll teach you how to Scotch Guard your balls because you want to protect those too.
I've been in the car with him for hours at a time, like driving between Denton and San Antonio, Denton and Tulsa. I've spent hours with him where we've been making proof prints and voices, characters. I don't know if it's just a product of being, I don't know if that's Jason being Jason, or if it's a product of a person who's had an acting career. But he'll drop into voices and he drops into routines. When he calls me on the phone, it's never Jason. It's always, hi, this is Steve Hamilton. It's always some bit, and I feel bad because I'm not an actor. Like, I don't have a bank of voices where I can just immediately start ad-libbing, some scene. So I always feel, it's always entertaining. It's one of the best things about being around him so much is he's always just sort of on, right? He's a high energy person. He's always on. He's always got that smile, He's always so energetic and he's always so kind and friendly, but he's also just got this range of showmanship, I guess, that I'm like, I can't even, I don't know how to be in the same room with that. Chris Brown does. Like, if you get the two of them together, they can bounce off each other, and they'll slip into the voices or the characters, and they'll go on and on and on, and I'm just sitting there laughing because I've got my own private sort of sitcom in front of me. That's great. And Will too, from the Eamon Carter, he's good at it too. So I always feel like I'm the really boring geeky guy that can't tell a joke or something like that, or do a funny voice. But yeah, he for sure is. Oh yeah, he just slips into that stuff, and it's always a blast.
It's funny, and I was a fan of his movies for sure, and the skateboarding definitely. Mm-hmm. But then when I saw his photography, that really, I just really liked the road trip aesthetic and all that, because I love road trips. And what really got me was there was an interview where he was talking about like the honesty of Polaroid photography, and like when he got into the 8x10s.
Sure. Yeah.
And that was what really struck me was that one where he talked about searching for honest images, and that was definitely the thing that struck a chord with me. If I had met Jason, never beat your heroes kind of thing. Yeah. If I had met Jason and I knew he was into photography and film photography, which I thought was great. If he had been like a cheeseball photographer, or wasn't very good as a photographer, or didn't have, if he was just sort of play acting at being a photographer, that would have wore me out, fast. I just was like, no, okay, that's great. Take care. But no, what was amazing was to find out that we had the same heroes in terms of photography, like Stephen Shore and the new topographics, and these people going out and sort of like my Wanderlust trips, going to these nowhere places on purpose and photographing, the mundane reality that's out there, because it's an important part of who we are as humans. So being in Texas, and I'm sure this is true of any place, there are certain cliches, and I've been guilty. I've photographed longhorns. I've sold prints of longhorns because it's Texas, blue bonnets, and it's that time of year. It's like, okay, like the cheesy little farm pictures. It's like this idyllic calendar sort of photography is good photography. You can't just go out and fake that. You've got to be an accomplished photographer to do that stuff. And I love that stuff. The National Geographic stuff, I love that stuff. It's exotic and it's so bold and colorful, and it takes a master photographer to pull that stuff off. But for someone to get good at photography and to drive down a random neighborhood street in Quanah, Texas, population 2,500, and find, the house on the end of this block that's got maybe a shrub that looks kind of interesting and the light's hitting it right. And that's when you jump out of your car, grab your 4x5 camera out of your trunk, and
pop off a couple of sheets of Portra, and then you keep doing that across 5 road trips, and you put out a book of that. Like, that's a dedication to not just difficult photography, expensive sort of road tripping to not so great, places, but it's an engagement with the day-to-day human spirit that we all live every day of our lives. One of the things that, and I've told this story, I don't know, a million times. One of the things that really strikes me about Jason's photography, when we've done gallery shows in Texas of the Plainview images, and if you live in Texas long enough, even in a big city, you end up figuring out that people have a connection to some other medium-sized place or some rural place. And so even in a city like Austin or Dallas or even in Denton, you'll meet people that are like, oh yeah, my grandparents, they lived in Lubbock, or they lived in Del Rio, or they were in Van Horn. But they would see these photos, and I've seen this happen multiple times. They always say the same thing. They say, because we all know about the Longhorns and the Bluebonnets, they're like, this is the Texas I know. And Jason's got a way of capturing, it doesn't have to be Texas, it can be anywhere. He's got a way of capturing a locale the way that people who live there every day of their lives can. And because I think you're invested in it on that 365 days a year, you don't see the same beauty that someone who's experiencing it for the first time does. And I noticed that about his photography immediately, and it's something that's extremely important to me. And so I think if there's any one thing that's really been the glue that holds our friendship together and our working relationship together, it's that same sense of urgency to seek out and depict the normal lives of people everywhere, no matter where they're from. And it's, I don't know, it's sort of like a mission, it's almost a mission. My wife and I, when you become a photographer or you start doing this stuff, you have to write like a bio and, and all this about us stuff. And one of the phrases that we landed on, a couple of them that are sort of important to us, and it's the kind of thing maybe you put on a gravestone or whatever. One is that significance is imposed. Like, we all have iPhones and we can, or mobile phones, and we can take pictures every day of our lives. But a well-made photograph made on a random day will end up meaning more to us and will connect us with our past and our history more so than a badly made photo on an important day. That's why wedding photography is so important. You want good photos of an important day. But if you've got good photos of random day Y, you'll latch onto that day as a good day. It might have been the worst weather in the world. You might have been in a really pissy mood. Maybe your dog died. But that photo you made on that day, 5 years later, 10 years later, you look back on it and you're like, man, that's where nostalgia kind of comes from, is that good, well-made photo of an otherwise uninteresting moment in time. And so you can impose significance upon, the randomness of life if you know how to photograph it well, or if you get lucky, or, things like that. But there's also this desire, or this yearning to bring the outside in, to go out and see places that are somewhere else. And it can be a mile away, it can be 1,000 miles away. But going there with a photographer's eye, or even just with the desire to capture it in a compelling sort of way, and then to bring that back and share it with others. I can't think of a more sort of noble reason to be a photographer, a poet, a writer, a painter, however it is that you can sort of transcribe your experiences and make them available to other people in sort of a compelling way. That was a lot. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No need to be sorry about that. That's great.
But I think that's definitely, and I think Jason has that too. And I think our common love of that and mission on that is what's really made working together even possible over the last few years, for sure.
Yeah, like that was one of the things that I really loved about Plainview, was just like the beauty in the mundane. Like a lot of those photos are things that you just drive past and you'd never think twice about it.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that with like a lot of like skateboarders turned photographer, that they have like an interesting eye for stuff that people overlook, because I think it goes back to that like always looking for skate spots kind of thing. Like,
Did you see the interview with Greg Hunt about 20th Century Summer that he did with Matt Day?
no, I didn't see that one. No.
You need to watch that one. Greg talks about the photos that are in that book. And one of the really interesting things that he points out, and I don't think I even noticed it working on the book, going through all the photos and doing all the technical work and, dealing with the book layout and, meeting Greg and all that stuff. And seeing the photos again and again and again every day. When we're putting together a book, I see the photos so many times that I sort of stop seeing them. And something that I didn't even notice. So having worked on the book and been a part of that process, I didn't notice that until I watched this interview with him and Matt Day, where he said, he points out, there's only like one skateboard in the entire book. Like he was on a road trip tour, a skateboard road trip tour with professional skateboarders, skateboarding like everywhere they went. And he's got a camera and he's shooting it everywhere he goes. And there's literally one or two photos in the book that even has a skateboard in it.
Oh, wild.
Right? So, I think there's definitely something about capturing, your world around you, especially candidly. You mentioned in your interview with Jason, seeing the Larry Clark exhibit, which is really heavy content, right? But I don't think he thought that when he was shooting it. I think he was doing what Greg Hunt was doing, or what anyone like me or Jason or you do when we're on a road trip. You're just photographing what happens on Tuesday. And I think, in Larry Clark's case, I think it was because he was not just documenting it. He was a part of what was going on.
Yeah, he was living that with them.
He was living that with them. And I don't think you think about how dramatic or terrible or awful or severe some of that stuff is. Maybe parts of it. I mean, like the guy with the bullet in his leg.
The one,
but it's when you come back to it later.
Yeah, the one that stuck out the most for me in that was in the book. I don't think they were allowed to print it because it was, I guess, too controversial. But the photo of the pregnant woman in the chair, and she's just like enveloped in this like beautiful light. Like she's sitting in a dark room in a chair and the light's just like streaming across her, but everything else is all dark. And you're just like struck by the beauty of the light, and you see that she's pregnant. And like the last thing I noticed, and a few people that I've showed the book to, the last thing they notice as well is the heroin needle hanging out of her arm. And then you see that and you're like, holy shit. Like,
you want to hear a funny story about the Larry Clark exhibit?
Yep.
So we were already working on the Tulsa sort of thing. Jason, I think, had already been up there and photographed everything. So that was for several weeks. And I drove around with them on one of the Plainview road trips, and I went down for some of the Galveston stuff. But I wasn't up there for any of the Oklahoma shooting. Ray was there, Pilot was there. I wasn't up there for any of that. So I'm not going up to Tulsa until later. So it's when we're doing meetings with the people at the Philbrook. And so clearly Jason and the folks at the Philbrook, they've already had some back and forth, and they've been, they've known each other for almost a year now. And so I'm coming in now, and I'm like, because I'm going to be printing some of the stuff and framing some of the stuff and kind of handling some of the production and logistics and whatnot. So now I'm starting to get involved in some of these meetings. And, we were talking earlier about, you mentioned Eric's book. I'm like, sometimes I learn things later. So I'm sitting in this room. That's all these museum folks. It's me and it's Jason. I'm taking notes about all this stuff. And, and I've got to put together this big production budget. I've got like all this stuff swimming in my head. And then someone there in the meeting, casually mentions that the Larry Clark exhibit is going to happen at the same time as Jason's exhibit. And what I don't know is whether or not Jason already knows this or not. So I'm sitting there and I'm like I'm looking over at Jason like, do you know this? You know, I'm like, because Larry Clark isn't just some random photographer.
Yeah.
His stuff is very, it's difficult stuff. It's very controversial. I mean, there's a, you know, and I'm like,
well, and I think that was the first time his work has ever been shown in Oklahoma too.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I'm not sure how the Philbrook came into possession of one of the portfolios. It's a beautiful box. I mean, it's wonderful that they've got it. And I'm certainly not suggesting that his stuff shouldn't be shown, but I'm like shooting all these glances over at Jason. I'm like, so we're in the car on the way back, and so, you know, he's driving, I'm in the passenger seat, and I'm like, so Larry Clark. I was like, did you know about that? And he's like, oh yeah. I'm like, do you know who Larry Clark is? You know, like, I'm like wondering all these things, why, you know, it seemed like something that would have bubbled to the surface sooner.
Yeah.
That showing alongside Larry Clark would have been something that would have been brought up and maybe discussed, but it was so casually mentioned, and it was the first time I had heard it. And that threw me for a loop. I was like, you know, that's hard drug use photography, right? You know.
I thought it was interesting having the two shows side by side.
It was absolutely, you know, once I got over the initial shock that they were going to be shown at the same time, you know, I got on board with it. And I think Scott at the Philbrook was brilliant for pairing the two together, because I think they both showed two not opposite. I mean, if Jason had gone to Oklahoma and did the cheesecake photography stuff, the calendar stuff, that would be the exact opposite of Larry Clark. And you would have like the pretty and the blah, blah, blah. And then you'd have the dark and the ugly. And it would be like this yin yang kind of thing. And it wasn't that. I think it was honesty on both sides. And I think Jason went up there and took very honest photos of the landscape and topography of Tulsa and Oklahoma's estate. And I think Larry Clark's, you know, depictions of what goes on behind closed doors in Tulsa did as well. And so it wasn't like opposite. It wasn't happy, sad, divided by a wall, but it was very two different, very honest depictions of Oklahoma. And I think in both cases, none of what anyone who's never been to Oklahoma, and you go, what do you think of Oklahoma? They're not going to go heroin addiction, you know?
Yeah.
You know, they're going to say, oh, I don't know, Indians. You know, it's football, like, you know, college football or something. You know, I don't know. Definitely there are stereotypes. But I think both of those exhibits, and being run simultaneously, you know, next to each other, really did, I think, a lot for people to see. It's not always pretty, but it definitely is a window, a true window onto the area.
They balanced each other really well, and I had no idea going into the trip what Tulsa was going to be like, because I'd never been down in that neck of the woods at all, and driving down was an interesting experience because we took parts of the old Route 66, and the people out there, really fascinating. Like, we stopped by the Blue Whale of Catoosa.
Oh, right, yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had a
Which
chance.
I've never seen.
Oh,
I've
you've
never seen it.
Man, if you are out that way again, you should try to see it. And, you know, fingers crossed, Blaine is still alive. But there's this guy there, Blaine. He's the keeper of the Blue Catoosa. And his father made the Blue Catoosa, or the whale of the Blue Whale of Catoosa, as a anniversary gift to his mother. And Blaine's parents had set up quite the exhibition grounds on that property over the years, because they had this swimming hole, and when the government rerouted Route 66, it went right past their property. And so people would see them out in this swimming hole in the summertime, and this was before air conditioning was like regular in cars. So people would stop and be like, "Hey, you mind if we like cool down a bit?" And they're like, "Of course." And being Americans, they're like, "Oh, we can capitalize on this experience." And so they made the Ark of Catoosa, which was a concession stand, a bathroom, and then it had like an upper floor where the kids could play while the parents do whatever. And then his father made the Catoosa Zoo, where like back in like this time period, you could go like fly to like South Africa and like catch an animal and bring it back with you on the plane. And so he had all these exotic pets and like animals and things and made a zoo.
Tiger King, he's in Oklahoma too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Something in the water there.
Blaine just had all these fantastical stories. But my favorite one was he was just like, I done been in 4 tornadoes. And when I say I've been in them, I don't mean just adjacent to them, but I mean it done picked me up and brought me to a new location. He's like, law of averages states I should not tangle with a fifth. So I tell you what, when I hear those tornado sirens go off, I go on down there and hunker down in the shitter. You'll see it when you go down there to the Blue Whale. It looks like one of them little grass huts, but it's made out of cement. My father fashioned it after what he saw on his safaris. And when them sirens go off, I just go down there and hug that porcelain until they go away.
Those tornadoes are no joke.
No, but sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was, it's for real.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. Like, I saw the remnants of what the tornado did, because when we stopped in Kansas, like when I flew into Kansas to drive down to Tulsa, they had just had a tornado rip through there. And so, like, you could see the damage from that. And it looked just incredible and awful. Like,
yeah, we 2 years ago, late 19. So the radio station I'm on, our studio, I got a call. My show I used to be on the show that was midnight to 4 a.m. I got a call about 8 o'clock in the evening. And it was like, "Hey, don't come into the station tonight. It was destroyed by a tornado." Like, I missed being in the studio by about 3 hours when it was destroyed, and it was destroyed. Like, the tornado hit the building.
Well, I was lucky you weren't in there.
I mean, no one died. Everybody in the building was fine, but the guy that was on the air and the broadcast booth, it was on the corner of the building, so it was 2 glass walls. The guy that was on the air, who was 2 shows before me, so I was on at midnight. There's a show that went from 10 to midnight. This is a guy that was on from 8 to 10. And it was, I guess, close to 10. It's been a while. But the people were showing up for the next show. They knew what was, the sirens were going off and like it was coming at them. So he ran into the building, went into the broadcast studio and basically pulled the guy out and into the interior of the building minutes or seconds before like the windows exploded and all this stuff. After the tornado went by, they went back into the studio. The building was still standing, but all the glass was blown out. The guy's, like his briefcase that he brought his laptop in and stuff like that, they pulled a piece of glass, and like, this is like safety glass. It's like 1/2 inch thick. It was as big as a slice of pizza that had been like flying around and landed in his like briefcase. Like, that's what was circulating in the room. Yeah. So it saved his life, I'm sure. But yeah, half the building was collapsed, and it was a mess.
Yeah,
tornadoes.
I haven't had to deal with tornadoes, but like here in BC, we regularly deal with like wildfires, and now we have flooding and like all that crazy stuff.
Do you get tsunamis?
On the coast, we do get tsunami warnings. Yeah, so it's we get
those signs
some
are funny,
interesting
though.
Stuff. The signs are hilarious.
Like run up a mountain.
But going back to Tulsa for a second, one of my favorite photographic stories was one you shared with me in Tulsa when you were talking about the effort it took to make that really big print of that like busted down house.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, that was so Jason tends to get his stuff scanned by the Icon out in LA, and they do great work. He gets drum scans and this, that, and the other. But for the Oklahoma stuff, I was like, let me do it. I've got this new technique where I'm using a DSLR, high megapixel camera. I can blow away, an Epson V800, blah blah blah, and I was okay, great. So we were going, shooting all this. It's all it's black and white, but it's a positive because it's all DR5.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all this stuff that part of the challenge is because it's a positive, you put it on a light table and you can actually see on the film the image, and it's got this characteristic to it. It's got this look and feel to it. It's not like a negative where you're like, wonder what this is going to look like. No, you can see the positive. So you're like, when we scan it and digitize it on the screen, it's like you want that same sort of experience that you get when you look at it on the light table. But then you start figuring out that the light table's got a color temperature and blah, blah, this and blah, blah, that. And so we were doing a lot to dial in, and I'm not going to get too far into the weeds in terms of how a digital sensor captures tonal range versus how film does and gamma this and all that. That's a different podcast. But there were a lot of technical issues that we were trying to solve and get around so that we could get these images the way that we wanted them. And that particular shot was the only one that we were printing that big. And so I'm like, well, okay, so it's a medium format shot. It was a 6:7 shot. So, it's about, negative's about yay big.
Yeah.
And we're printing it 40 by 50, so it's going to be real big. And so I thought, well, okay, so I've got this technique where I can digitize film with at the time I was using a Nikon D800, so 36 megapixel, which gives you great resolution. But it's a big piece of film, and we're trying to make the print so big, and I had it in my head that I wanted to be able to capture the film so that when I was printing it, it had zero upsizing. I wanted to be able to capture it at such a macro level that so digital printing happens at 360 pixels per inch. So you can multiply 360 times 50, and that's the number of pixels that you need to make the print. And then you go, okay, well, there's 8,000 pixels in this digital sensor, and we need, I don't know what the number is, but it's a lot. And you start going, okay, I can't get that from a single shot. I've actually got to shoot this medium format negative in sections, kind of like the whole gigapixel thing. If you like the guy who goes and does the gigapixel shot of the inauguration every 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
You shoot it in sections and you stitch it back together. The good news is that Photoshop is really, really good at stitching the stuff back together to a point. So I was, and I overdid it. I'm like, okay, I want this print to be 1-to-1. I don't want any upsizing. I want to be able to shoot this in such a way that I'm going to get these pixels onto the paper, and they're going to be the actual sort of 1-to-1. And so I'm like doing the math. I'm like, okay, I've got to shoot this. I've got to take this rectangle and divide it into 9 pieces, like a tic-tac-toe board. And which I was able to do. I've got, so one of the things I do is I use enlarging lenses instead of macro lenses. They're designed to do rectilinear work. I've got the macro bellows. I'm at such a magnification that it's impossible to square everything up. Like, I'm using like a level, I'm using graph paper, I'm shooting tethered, I've got everything on the screen. Like, I can't move things in small enough increments to make everything line up the way it's supposed to be. But that wasn't the worst of it. I was at such a degree of magnification. If you go back and read books on like landscape photography that were written in the 90s, they're like, put your camera on a tripod, do mirror lockup, use a cable release, like all these things to keep camera shake from making your picture a little blurry. Like if you want the sharpest picture you can get, they're like all these things you do. Mirror lockup, cable release, put a weight on your tripod so that the wind doesn't buffet. All these things. I was doing all of that indoors. Mirror lock, and I'm still getting motion blur. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, the world around us vibrates. Like a truck driving down the street. It doesn't matter. Like, it's shaking the cement foundation of the building I'm in. I could not get a clear picture. I actually had to move to the bathroom, like deeper inside the building, and set everything up on a granite countertop, weighted down with weights. And even then, I had to sort of give up my goal of trying to do like this huge gigapixel sort of thing, and it ended up being 4 shots that were pieced together that I did have to upsize it. I wasn't able to achieve my goal of doing it 1-to-1, but to get it to 1-to-1 at 40 by 50, yeah, just like life around us was vibrating too much.
That's wild.
It's like you start reading about things like string theory and quantum mechanics, and you're like, the world doesn't sit still enough for things to get photographed sharply, you know. Maybe there's a way if I can rig up a light source that's a strobe instead of an LED panel, so that my shutter speed is 1/4000th of a second. You know, maybe then, but even then, you've got some other problems like shutter roll and things. So I don't know. I spent, God, I don't know, 40 hours trying to photograph one piece of film and to get it to be just as massive as I could. And it was definitely a situation where I had to scale it back. I had to kind of give up and go, okay, all right. It's nice to want to be able to do it that way, but yeah, I definitely had to scale it back a little bit. But the result, I think the final result is still one of the most impressive things I've done in terms of digitizing an original, because that really was quite an endeavor to do.
It was beautiful to behold.
Yeah, when you get up close to it and you're not seeing anything digital, it still looks like film, like film grain, and just the sharpness was there and the tonality was there. It was a beautiful shot to begin with, but it was a lot of work.
Yeah, because I remember you told me, because I asked you, like, you know, you mentioned that you did some printing and framing, and I was like, you know, which one are you most proud of? And it was that big guy. It's such a beautiful. I think I posted it on my Instagram a few weeks back.
Just recently. Yeah.
Because I got a picture of you standing next to it.
And did you give me one of the Polaroids of that? I think I've got.
I think I gave you a Polaroid of it too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the other thing about Polaroids. It's when you give someone the original, that's meaningful. It's not a dupe. It's not a copy. You know, it's the real thing.
Well, and like that's one of the reasons why I really love Polaroid is like it's a very personal thing too, and it's a tangible thing that you can share with someone. Yeah. And so when I see someone that I haven't seen in a while, what I usually do is I'm like, we're going to play a game here. I'm going to take 2 shots of you, and then you get to pick which one you like more, and then I'll keep the other one. And then we both can kind of remember this moment. And yeah, they're cool. And then in the new studio space I'm in here, I'm building a Polaroid door. So everyone that comes and visits gets a shot taken, very cool. And then they sign it. And so this was today's visitor, Sophia. She's down the building from me, but I forgot to get her to sign it.
The bookstore down the street from me, Deep Ellum Books, they do the same thing. They've got I think it's just a one-step like what you've got. I don't know if they're still doing it, but they've got dozens of Polaroids up on the wall near the cash register of, regular customers and stuff like that, which is pretty cool.
But you asked what my favorite Polaroid was, and it's there's 2. 3, I guess, technically. SX70, SLR 680, and the Polaroid 195.
You've got one of those?
I've got 2 of them.
That's amazing. That's another thing that I don't have, which is pack film. So the integral stuff I think is neat. That's never been my canvas, so to speak. I've always been pack film. Pack film. I love pack. When Fuji announced that they were discontinuing the 3000B, I dropped $1,000 on 100 boxes of it because it was still $10 a box, and I'm still sitting on about half of it.
Nice.
It's in the fridge. I didn't do the same. Regrettably, I didn't do the same thing when they said the same thing when they did the same thing to 100 the color. So I don't have the same stockpile of color, but I've got a huge chunk of 3000B, and I happen to have it right here. My favorite Polaroid.
Oh, nice. The goose.
Yeah, the goose, which I love so much. I did the Stevie Ray Vaughan thing, and I put trucker letters on the back with my initials.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
I regrettably sold my goose, and
oh man, the goose is the best. It's such a brick. If you ever need to defend yourself, if you ever get mugged, and you've got this guy, you'll be okay.
That's how I feel about my F5. I love shooting the F5 on street because if anyone fucks with me, I'm just going to clock them with it, and it'll still take pictures.
We actually have two. We've got two. We have geese. The other one has ELC on it. Erin Lynn Curry, my wife's maiden name. And we did manage to pick up the 75. I don't know. Yours probably just had the 127 or whatever.
Yeah.
We don't have they also had 150, I think. But we tracked down a 75. So we've got the wide angle on one and the 127 on the other. And I absolutely love it. I love, especially shooting 3000B through it, because you can handle. You never have to put it on a tripod. Mm-hmm. Even at night, you can just open it up to, I don't know, for whatever. Maybe you brace it against something. I've done cool things where we've been at a bar, which, man, that seems to happen a lot. But I'll put it on
Deep Ellum, who'd think?
I know, right? But I'll put it on F30 or F40. How tight does this lens get? This lens gets down to, I want to say, F64. All the way down to F64. So I'll put it on that and use a cable release to, oh man, you're showing off.
Well, so I did a change with it too. I don't know if you can notice, but this is not the regular rangefinder for it.
You upgraded the rangefinder, yeah?
Yeah, I did the 250, but the other one doesn't have it. The reason I have two is I bought this one. I actually got ripped off on this one. This one was a sketchy story. But the other one is a friend of mine, Henry Robideau. He's up there in age, so he's starting to sell his gear off. And he had a 195 and a bunch of pack film, and his 195 kit was complete. He had all of the accessories and everything with it too, the different lens attachments and stuff.
Yeah.
And he gave me a price that was way too good to say no to. So I'm I already have one, but now I've got.
That's kind of like my Hasselblad story. We you always hear about plastic surgeons or dentists who amass this collection of gear and never use it, or they always take, because they're surgeons, they take immaculate. We looked into a Hasselblad collection from a deceased doctor, and yeah, we got everything, one of everything. We have the fisheye. Who has the Hasselblad fisheye? Yeah, several bodies. We have the flex body. If you ever wanted to shoot a Hasselblad with movements.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I've shot one picture with it. It's actually kind of a pain to use, but we've got one.
On the pack film topic today, and I brought this just because it showed up right before I left the house to go to the studio. My shipment of this finally came in. The one instant black and white.
I want to believe.
I'm curious to see
how.
I
want to believe.
I'm curious to see how it works. Have you shot the one instant color, this stuff?
No, I got some of the new type 55 that
How
didn't
is
work
that?
very well.
Oh no.
And I was on the Kickstarter and I got some of the early stuff, and I only shot a little bit of it. I'm still sitting on a bunch of it, and it's probably all just crap at this point.
I think the new stuff is supposed to be a lot better. They've improved it.
I want pack film to come back. No one wants pack film to come back more than me. My problem is that a one shot of it, I'm like, I could just retrofit black and white 4x5 film to my Goose
That's true.
and get kind of the same end result. The thing about pack film with 10 shots and it just, you just pull it and it works. There was something rapid about it that really fed into the experience for me. And I love the camera. But they both kind of go together. I would almost rather have an Instax wide back for the Goose or for a Crown Graphic than the one shot. But I understand that supporting one shot is important because that's what's going to lead to it, becoming a thing again.
Hopefully. It kind of hinges on Fuji not being an asshole, which Fuji's really proven that they're really good at just being an asshole.
One thing that Fuji, I don't think Fuji gets enough credit for this. One thing that they did manage to figure out is a way to do something that looks and works like integral film, but it's actually pack film technology because it's straight path through. Like if you've got your Instax wide, it's a direct path from the lens to the film. And everything is reversed the way it's supposed to be. Like that's what was so great about pack film was that it didn't have to bounce off a mirror, which makes the camera bulky, but it also degrades the image a little bit. Like pack film, like any other film, was a direct path. It's straight through. It had to make this weird U-turn through the pack so that it transferred and everything came out reading correctly. But when Instax Mini came out, or Instax came out, I don't think anyone really stopped to pause and go, wait a minute, this is what Polaroid could never do. It was the convenience of a shake it like a Polaroid without the weird, bulky mirror shenanigans that Polaroid dealt with for 40, 50 years and never bothered to find a way to fix. Fuji did. So I'm pissed off at Fuji as much as anyone that they just scrapped the pack film machinery. Like, they should have let Impossible Project buy that stuff off of them and continue to make pack film. I love pack film. I wish we still had it.
Me too.
But they did figure out a way to do integral style film with a direct pack. And that is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And Instax deserves a lot more credit than it gets. It's a great film. The thing
especially now that they've got the bigger version of it.
Yeah,
the Mini was too small.
The Mini's too small. I like the square a lot, and I've got a lomography square that I use often. And
yeah,
my problem with Instax is I really kind of just fucking hate the cameras that Fuji's made because it's all garbage and it doesn't really.
We had the Instax Mini back for the Diana, and that was a fun combination.
That is a fun combination, but I just feel like the cameras Fuji's made for Instax don't really do the film justice. So I agree, and that what excites me are these folks that are like 3D printing backs that'll go on a graphic, a Crown Graphic, or fit on the back of a Mamiya. Like a Mamiya is the perfect camera for shooting Instax, and so if you've got and I know they're out there. I haven't bothered to track one down yet. But being able to shoot Instax wide on a Goose or anything else that takes a Graphlok back, that I think is pretty cool. Yeah, and then Paul made a comment here asking how you like the Lomo Graphlok back. I haven't played with one, but I've heard people say good things.
Yeah, I know some that have, and they swear by them.
Yeah, and I mean also like you could just do the dark bag trip too if you want to do wide.
And I've seen some people that do that, and man. Hats off to those folks. That's a lot of work. I mean, you've got to load it, shoot it, unload it, back into the pack, put it in another camera, and then spit it out.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work for an instant photo.
But it's cheaper than 4x5.
Barely.
Fairly.
I mean,
but
it's barely. If you can develop it yourself, 4x5, I think is.
That's true. Yeah, like that's one of the things that I'm excited about for this new studio space is like, eventually I'm going to get the darkroom. Oh, sorry, what was that?
I was just going to say, what do you shoot medium format wise? Because I know Jason's big into 4x5. I find it kind of laborious, and I get confused about which shots I've shot, and I never get this stuff developed. Like, I'm a bad actor when it comes to large format. My wife and I took a trip through the South photographing kudzu on infrared 8x10 film, and we've only developed like 6 sheets. The rest have been in the carriers for literally 3 years now. They're probably fogged and ruined. Like, we spent real time driving through the South, dragging the 8x10 camera out at 110-degree temperatures, fighting mosquitoes, and I can't be bothered to develop the film because it's such a hassle. Medium format, though, I love medium format.
Medium format's great, and I mean, I just dumped a fuck ton of money on Fuji. I bought more 400H than I want to admit when it was cheap, because I was just like, they were selling it for like $10 a roll, and Kodak is going for like 22 up here right now. So it's just
That's insane.
It's wild. Like, film prices are just mental. So I was just like, you know what? I don't love Fuji that much, but at $10 a roll, it's like a 2-for-1 deal.
You need to go to like, you need to go to Freestyle and buy the student brands, like the Arista stuff. There's no company making Arista film. That's Fuji film.
But isn't Arista that's just black and white though, or do they have color?
What do you get? Oh, you're getting Provia, or you're getting color film.
Yeah. The
I'm
Arista.
sorry,
I thought Arista was Ilford.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think maybe it changes.
Sorry. Kentmere is Ilford.
Yeah. I think the Arista I was told was Fuji Acros.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Now this was several years ago, and maybe that's changed. But for black and white stuff, the cheapest stuff you can find.
Yeah.
Shoot the Chinese stuff.
I still like Ilford a lot. For black and white, I tend to
That's what I
default. Yeah, like I like HP5 a lot for it.
Yeah.
And even a lot of people poo-poo on it, but I like XT2 a lot. It's kind of a fun film. But for medium format, my go-to cameras, it's either... I've got a Bronica SQAI that I absolutely love, but it's temperamental as shit. And as much as I love it, half the time when I pick it up, I want to drop kick it off of a building. Because they're so finicky. Like, sometimes it'll work marvelously for 10, 20 rolls. And then other times it'll like shit the bed halfway through a roll, and then I'll be like, fuck you, I'm done with you. But for something that's like absolutely resilient, works every time, and I can totally trust 100% is the Fuji 6.7, the Texas Leica.
Is that a fixed lens?
GW 690. That's the one, not 6.7. It is a fixed lens. I think it's like a 90mm lens or something that's on it.
I've got the one that shoots a 6.9.
Yeah, sorry,
fixed.
Mine's the 692 GW 690.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah. But I don't have the super wide one. I've got the less expensive one. That's is it a 90?
Yeah, I think it's a 90, and it's like 75 and 90 were the difference. I've got the 92, but I love that camera. It's great, except my wallet cries a little bit every time I use it because
the transport on mine slips towards the end of the roll, so my last couple of shots end up overlapping.
I haven't had that problem with mine, but 8 shots is not very much on 120.
Right. You know what that camera was meant for?
No.
Do you know the story behind that? Now, I've been told this. I haven't verified this with independent research. The story I was told was bus tour groups in Asia. Like, you get on the bus and they're taking you around to see the sights. Great Wall of China, whatever it is. At the end of the day, you've gotten to know all the people. So the bus driver gets off the bus and takes the group photo, and then immediately runs and processes it. And now you can buy like when you go to Six Flags and you get your picture, because you just got off the roller coaster. So, but only 8 shots. So they would have to take, I think they made like short rolls for them too.
Okay.
But it was a big enough, wide enough, but compact. The Texas Leica, it was a small enough camera, but it would shoot a big enough, wide enough group photo. That was like the target audience for those.
That makes sense. I can see that. I love that camera though. It's great. And I also have like a Mamiya C30 C33.
I have a love-hate. I've got several of those cameras. I've got, I think, almost all the lenses. I even picked one up in the last year that was, so when Ray was in town to sign his book, my phone went off and I was like, oh crap, I'm supposed to go buy this camera. And so I had to leave the studio. I left my assistant and Ray so that they could sign books, and I had to drive across town to buy this camera. And or maybe that was a graphic. Anyway, I recently picked up a really cherry, nice C330 with several lenses that were still in the plastic containers they come in. Yeah, I've got several 330s, a bunch of lenses. The only thing I don't have is the tripod thing, like the parallax correcting thing.
I've got one of those.
You've got like the piece I'm missing.
I've got it. I never use it.
I've got like all the accessories. What kills me about that camera, and I know there's one lens that does have it, is the lack of depth of field preview. And I guess I end up using that more than you might think. I don't know. Maybe I shoot wide open more than other folks, but not being able to know my depth of field without breaking out an app on my phone. That's like, I love the compact nature of it though. I love that you can travel like with 6 lenses and it's all fits in a backpack.
It's great for street photography too because it's sort of stealthy.
Oh yeah, you can shoot sideways. Yeah, you can shoot sideways.
Well, you can shoot sideways, but also
just because it's level, you're not.
Yeah, and I also like too. It's like it's sort of stealthy, so you can like frame up a shot, you can get it all focused, and then you just like stand there waiting for the right moment. And then when you hit the shutter, it's just like click. It's not obvious.
One of my favorite things to do. So I've got my Bessa here. This has got the 15 millimeter lens on it. So I'll go to like a Waffle House, and it's scale focus, and at f8, everything in the universe is in focus. There's no depth of field, and so I'll set it all up, and I'll use the self timer. I'll put it on top of my glass of water, and just point it at the guy making hash browns or flipping eggs or whatever. And you set the self timer for 15 seconds, and you start talking to someone, and you hear this. And like it takes a photo. No one knows that it's taken a photo. It just looks like it's just sitting there, and you get the most amazing sort of candid kind of shots.
That's very cool.
Yeah. But it's got to be like a super wide, because you don't get to compose your shot. You're just like pointing it left.
Yeah, and you're just getting whatever it gets.
You're just getting everything. Yeah. And you got to get it up off the counter. Like if you've got it on the counter, half your shot's going to be counted. So you got to put it on top of like your coffee cup or something. It can't be a little tripod. It's tipping your hand. But if you can just like set it on top of something and
then
set
it's
the self timer and
You're making me miss travel photography a lot. I'm hoping that the testing requirements relax before PolaCon Texas comes up, because I'd really like to make it back down for that this year. And
definitely you got to come down. There'll be PolaCon happens almost on my birthday.
Oh wow! Yeah, because it's the last week in September, 50. Right?
Yeah, and so 10/10, right? So it's almost, so it'll be It'll be my 50th birthday. It'll be a big celebration.
Well, so
I've been threatening. So I've been, one of the things we haven't talked about tonight is what I do have sitting across the hall in my studio, and that's Jason's 20 by 24.
Armand mentioned that you're working on restoring it.
By working on restoring, it's sitting in the back of the studio, not doing much. But it's here, and I've got all the stuff. And we did try once to kind of set it up and going, but we were missing a part at the time, and hours in the day and that kind of stuff. And once you do get it up and going, it's like, okay, what do we even take a picture of?
Yeah.
Every time you push the button on this stuff, it's like that cash register. It's like $100. Ka-ching! $100. Ka-ching! Oh, it didn't turn out. So there's a certain degree of fear that comes along with even shooting it. In fact, I've been somewhat tempted to just get some damn 20 by 24 film from Ilford and just shoot, just normal film in it, just to use it. But my big fantasy is because I'm in Deep Ellum, which is next door to Fair Park. So the Friday night of PolaCon is literally in my backyard. I've always wanted to have like a demo or something with that 20 by 24 on that Friday night of PolaCon.
That'd be rad.
And yeah. And so is this the year?
Dude, it would be great. And like, I might be around for your birthday too, because I've been toying with the idea of sticking around for a bit down there, because Armand's always like, crash at the house. And we were planning like last summer, before when they first said that they were maybe going to relax things, like I was going to go spend like 3 weeks with Armand, and we are going to like road trip around Texas and shit.
Yeah.
But
absolutely, come down. If he won't put you up, I will.
Well,
you might have to share an inflatable mattress with my Greyhound, but
I might take you up on that.
You wouldn't be the first. You won't be the last.
Because if everything goes well, like one of the ideas so far is Pete Gamaskus, the guy that bought the Leaklin, Jason's old Lincoln.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he's thinking of going down. And
cool.
He was going to drive it down. I'm like, well, shit, man, if you're going to drive it down, why don't I fly out to New Hampshire and drive down with you? And like, I can't go the other way, but like I could definitely, give you company one way. So might do that, and then spend a couple weeks down there with Armand, and yeah.
Oh, that'd be cool. I'd love to hop back in that car.
Well,
I've done a lot of miles in that car.
It's going to be back. Hopefully.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Definitely, you got to come down. You got to stay. And you can stay here if need be. Absolutely. Open invitation.
Well, and you always got a place to stay.
Because I was about to say, because I'm going to end up in Canada at some point.
Dude, anytime. I mean, I have a very small studio apartment, but I have a very comfortable air mattress that fits in my kitchen. And that's what we've got. So in Deep Ellum, we've got the loft experience too. And we've got a very nice inflatable mattress. Sounds perfect.
That's our guest bedroom.
Well, I'll take you up on it.
We roll it up and tuck it away.
You guys are more than welcome up here too.
Oh man, this has been so amazing. Thank you for inviting me to do this, and this has been a lot of fun.
It's been great. Thank you for joining in. Like these sessions have been a lot of fun. Like it's definitely helped me through these pandemic times to stay connected with people.
So I'd been on the radio for several years, but it was this weird midnight to 4 a.m. thing. Erin wasn't involved. It was like this thing that I kind of went and did. It was like a Zen thing. When we took over doing a primetime show, and now we've got people that like call in and request. We've got like an audience that we know, and they call up and they make requests and they interact with us. And because I was doing with Erin, it became our pandemic thing. And the fact that we had to go back and do all this research into 60s music and all that stuff. So yeah, there's something about doing something like this that it's not your main thing, right? Like I'm guessing this doesn't pay your bills.
No,
Me doing this radio show doesn't pay mine either.
yeah,
But
I
there's
work
something
for
about throwing yourself at something and putting it out there for others to enjoy, and and it's interactive and you feel like you're a part of a community. No, I think this is what you're doing is very cool.
Well, and it's just been a lot of fun too, because like it originally started like on a lark. Like I was like making dinner and I saw other people doing lives, and I'm like, I'll try this live thing. And so like people would just watch me cook dinner, and like they'd ask me questions and shit. And then it started turning into like they'd ask questions about photography. And then I realized you can pull another person in so that you're not the only one on the hot seat. So I'm like, that's cool. And that morphed into
In 10
like,
words or less, explain reciprocity failure.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm kidding.
Go watch Grainy Day's YouTube video. It is great.
There you go. Awesome.
But no, it's been really cool. Like I've had an opportunity to talk with some amazing people on here,
Yeah.
and share that with everyone else. And it's just been neat connecting with people all over the place too. Yeah, and I
Well, I
really
hope we didn't lose too many people with the political stuff early on.
no. Well, so one of my best friends, Chris here, he's like, it's okay, Merlin, you could admit my podcast inspired you. I think he did like half a dozen episodes and then it died or something. But, you are an inspiration, Chris, and I miss you a lot. But it's been great. And, I appreciate you hanging out and spending some time with me tonight.
Happy to be here. Oh, it's been so much fun.
Yeah. And
a great end of the week. Great end of the week.
I have to agree too. It's been a weird week for sure. And then next week is going to be kind of interesting on the chat. This is the first time I've done this. I've never actually met or talked to this person at all prior. This was all set up through her publisher, but a lady named Diane Kahn is going to be on here.
Okay.
She made this book about holding hands. Looks interesting. So that's
is that what publisher is that?
Geez, his name's Andrew. I don't know what company it is.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Well,
see.
Hopefully they don't watch this.
Well, I'm just hoping they show up even because
Okay.
trying to get confirmation was a bit of a tough one. But nothing like Jason. It was interesting trying to make sure setting up a time with him and everything, because even on the day of, I was like, is he actually going to show up? I'm not sure. Because it was just kind of interesting. I'd be like, hey, is this okay? He's like, rad. And I'm like, okay, so it's cool. He's like, no, not that day. And I'm like, but you just said rad.
Oh, man.
So it's just like, when I started the chat, I was like, please show up, please show up, please show up. But
he did, right?
He did.
You didn't have to reschedule?
No, didn't have to reschedule. But the sad thing with that episode was he was on an Instagram break at that time. So I had to do this convoluted setup where we were on a Zoom.
Zoom, okay.
Yeah, we were on a Zoom, and then I rebroadcasted the Zoom through my computer with like OBS and some like live broadcaster thing.
Oh, you're making my head swim.
It was all convoluted, but the thing was, Instagram took away the 1 hour time limit that used to be on the lives if you're using the app, and I didn't know that it didn't apply to this other thing, and so we hit an hour and then it just dropped and like the chat was over, but the Zoom was still going. Luckily it happened like we were at a natural lull, like he paused for a minute to think about something, but then it kind of sucked because like he got into this really interesting story about like the Del Mar skate ranch and like all this stuff that,
oh wow, yeah. Oh man, yeah,
was really cool, but that didn't get captured. But it was still cool to like
that's too bad.
Chat with him. Like he's an interesting dude, and he just makes me think of like a kooky dad.
He's definitely in full dad mode. I've seen him, he's got 6 kids.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of kids.
It's quite the tribe.
It is, and they're everything from like very, very young to, teenager graduating high school. And so I don't have any kids. I've got a stepdaughter that's 25. So it's like, I came along in time to like the whole teaching to drive thing. So no diapers or anything like that. My brother has 6 kids. And so I've known, dad types where you've just got like a pile of kids all over the place. And it's a different kind of individual.
Yeah. It definitely is. Like I don't have kids, but I've got 2 brothers, and they've got a pair each, and I absolutely love my nieces and nephews. They're hilarious little characters.
And at the end of the day, they go home.
Exactly. I can get them all riled up, and then it's like, all right, bye. Like
you get them all caffeinated and full of candy, and you go, all right.
Exactly.
It's been fun.
Well,
oh man.
And this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for hanging out with me.
For sure.
And I will definitely probably see each other in September.
I do hope so.
Really going to make that one happen, because even if the testing requirements are still there,
don't make me come all the way to Canada. You come here.
All right. Here. I will see you in September. I'll be down there. And,
Beautiful.
I'm going to play the outro music here. And
all right.
Thank you again for being on here. And, I look forward to seeing more of the book projects.
I didn't see one from me.
Ooh. Well, that's more on that later. That's a bombshell to end on.
I know, right?
Well, thank you, Steve. Tuned. It's been really great chatting with you. Give my best to Erin, and
will do.
I'll see you in September.
Beautiful.
Cheers, man.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.